Welcome to the Rich in Purpose Transform Childhood Trauma Summit. Today we're here with Tammy Oswald. Tammy isn't just a holistic life, divorce, and relationship coach. She's a living testament to resilience. After navigating a painful high conflict divorce and emerging from deep loss, she rediscovered herself and dedicated her life to helping others heal. With 26 years in social work and the courage to face her own shadow, she now empowers women to break free from limiting beliefs, reclaim their inner worth, and walk boldly into their new chapter. And in the process, she has become an overcomer extraordinaire, self-development junkie, a lifelong learner, and a cheerleader for all. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here today.
Well, Tammy, I'm so honored and grateful that you're here because, we talked a little bit before you said that you wanted to do it. And just through talking with you, I learned a lot. So I'm anxious or eager to have our audience just to find out exactly how they can overcome some of their past by talking to you today. Okay. So I'm going to just kind of go ahead and start off with the first question. And it says, you talk about embracing our past as a pathway to empowerment. For many survivors, the past feels overwhelming or shameful. What does it actually mean to embrace your past in a way that heals rather than re-traumatizes?
Great question. I think all your questions that you're going to ask me today are awesome. So I want to clarify first and foremost, I want to clarify I am not a trauma therapist. And so for me, even though we go back and we look at the things that are surrounding the trauma that we've been through, because there's a lot there that we can take away from it, I will never go and expect someone to go through specifically their trauma. Like, we don't walk through what happened. My lens that I look through, because I will always recommend for someone who's been through some big stuff that you need to go and see a therapist who's trained in doing that. So I want to be very clear on that first and foremost, that that's not where I'm trying to go today. And I have many of my clients that have been in years of therapy, that have done their own trauma therapy and then come to me, and then now they're trying to figure out why they're getting stuck, or what's coming up and why, and how do we go back and figure it out. So great question. You're right. We all can relate, right? We can all relate to, if we've been through trauma, it can be shameful, it can be heavy, it can be overwhelming. And so the thought of going back can be very heavy, especially if you haven't done the work, right? If you've not even been in any sort of therapy or anything, that can really be weighing a lot. And it would be quite common for people to maybe even try to put that up on a shelf, or bury it, or stuff it. And that happens for many, many years to a lot of us, right? Until we get to a place where we're ready to actually do the work, it can feel very heavy, right? So what I try to do is look at it through a different lens. And so what I try to help people do is, when you come to me, I want to help you to move forward in your life. Because what I'm finding is, and I found this in my own situation, it took me going through my divorce and all of the conflict that was going on in that, and all of the trauma that I was, going through during that I realized that it wasn't just all of that in my marriage that I needed to heal, but what was happening is I was getting triggered by past stuff from my childhood. Now, we haven't talked a lot about my childhood, but basically I learned my coping behaviors of coping was to become this codependent people pleaser, right? I was the perfect child, perfect person, perfect everything, right? And we do that. Usually the reason we do that is to not be rejected or abandoned, or to be accepted or loved or whatever, right? To get validation, whatever. So I became really good at it. As most of us can be, we can get to the point where we can read a room like nobody, right? And so we can get so good at that, and we can be a hero, and we can get a lot of mileage out of that, which is what happened with me. It was very, I was the good person. I was perfect. I was well-liked. I was all the things. And then I went to social work, and I had just a heart for service, and I was always the person that people came to for help, right? And I thought I was just doing life well. I thought I was doing it right, and I'm good. I don't need any help, right? I never thought I had to look at it until things started to fall apart in my marriage, and then I had to go to therapy. And then when all of that happened and all those triggers happened, I realized like, oh, wow, I have a lot of stuff to unpack. And so that's what I'm seeing in clients that I work with too. A lot of times my clients are usually coming because they're having issues in a relationship or they're in the process of a divorce, right? And so there's a lot of triggers that happen. And so what I hope is to help people to see that where you are today doesn't have to be that way. Like you don't have to look at it as something heavy and you don't have to wear it like this, badge of dishonor or shame or something like that. Of whatever happened to you, it's your story. It's just part of your journey. It's what made you who you are today. But let's unpack it a little bit. Let's get to the core root of where you are right now and why you show up the way you do, why you feel the way you do, why you might be having patterns of behavior that continues to show up. For me, like I personally realized like I was constantly choosing, right after my divorce, I did some dating and I realized like I was choosing unavailable men. And so I had to look in the mirror, right? I had to look in the mirror and say, wow, why is that? And so I realized that I too was unavailable emotionally. And so I had to take myself out of that dating game and do the work. So when we can actually take a step back and we go back to our past and figure out what's getting in our way and get to the core root of that, we can change it. And then that empowers us to change how we show up. And then we can be intentional going forward and we can not be a victim to the past. We can take our power back. So I hope if nothing else that I put that out there for people.
Well, you just said a lot right in that one statement or that one little process that because I don't know one single person really that hasn't went through childhood trauma that's not a people pleaser, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we all get through life because we feel that can make us safe, and we like I used to think, oh, I just like to work hard, but that was also a part of being in the trauma, right? And doing, you know, working hard was how I got praise. So
Right.
there's so many things, and so I just so agree with you that you have to understand first off that you had childhood trauma. Many people don't
Yes.
realize that, and then you have to realize that if you're a leader and you're a people pleaser, it just doesn't work because you're not really leading people. You're doing kind of what they want you to do, and so you end up in not being a good leader at all because you didn't address that. So I agree with you a
When
hundred. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just agree with you 100% that you need to realize that you've had trauma and you need to address it.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up, even being a leader in the corporate world or wherever, because it does show up in all the ways. It doesn't just show up in a relationship, right? Or just like a romantic relationship. It shows up in all the things. It shows up in your family relationships, in your friendships, in your work, and all of that. Being a leader, like it shows up in all the ways. And so when people have issues that come up, that's where the patterns come. And that's where we can actually figure out what's going on and see like, okay, we're showing up the same way in all these different avenues of our life or these areas of our life. So now we can get somewhere. And now let's get to the core root. Let's go back and figure out how did we get here? Let's undo that.
Well, because and the reason we always end up there is because we don't know what's wrong, right?
Exactly.
We grew up thinking that what we're doing is right, and then you get out into the real world, and it's like I really did that so I would be safe. So,
100%.
it's just one of those things that you just don't really realize that you've got trauma sometimes.
Yeah,
Tammy,
I love that you said that we don't have that awareness because typically most things that do like run the show or drive our bus is what I usually say are usually subconscious, right? We don't have that awareness. We're really going through life unconscious until something brings that awareness to us. And then once we see it, then we can't unsee it. And now we've got to change some things about it so that we can do it differently. But we have the power to do that, which I love.
right, and awareness has been a lot of the speakers that I've talked to and coaches,
Mhm.
awareness, be aware, be aware,
Yes.
be aware. So that's good that you brought that up. And you mentioned many times that, and you're just mentioning we're being run by our unconscious belief and wounds. What are some signs that someone's past is running the show in their adult life, even if they consider themselves high functioning or successful?
Yeah, I love that you just I first want to address, and I think I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but like how you said that we can think we're successful and we're doing really well, right? Um, but we're not. And so usually how it might show up is very much we would be triggered. And so it might happen in a relationship with a partner or spouse, might happen in the office or someplace at work, where we're triggered by something someone says or does, and triggers very much, it's not just like, oh gosh, what they said like hurt me or whatever. It's like I'm triggered. I'm really upset about it. Like it's really bothering me. And so that would be a sign that there's something underneath that. Because what I find is that usually when we get triggered, it's not just what is happening in the moment, right? It's usually we have to go back and we have to uncover and say, where did that come from? Where in your past have you felt this way before, right? And so let's go there. And so that's what I do with people is to go back and do some diving into that. And that means we're talking about childhood trauma here. And so that means we're going to have to do some inner child work, right? And so what we have to do is go back and see what around that trauma came as a result of that that's showing up right now. So it might be a belief, right? It might be a thought that was formed. And when you think about it, when we're kids, our brain is not fully developed yet, right? And so when we have something bad happen to us, you think about when we're kids, we also are very self-absorbed. And so we take everything as our fault or about us or something's wrong with me. And that is the belief, that is the core wound that runs the show for the rest of our life until we get the awareness and start to work on it and heal that, right? So that's what we have to do. We have to go back and figure out like, what was that thought? What was that belief that showed up? What was the maladaptive coping behaviors that were a result of that we took with us? And I will say, like, even as we go and we find a partner to marry, we will choose a partner. Typically, this is what I've found. This is what I've been trained in and what I've seen in many of my clients is that we will take those maladaptive coping behaviors from our childhood and we choose a partner that allows us to continue those. We look for what's familiar and what will allow us to remain who we are or who we were, right? The unhealed version of us. And so that works for a while until it doesn't. And that's what I'm seeing today. And a lot of the people that are coming to see me for divorce is that they are ready to grow and evolve and heal. And they've done work on themselves. A lot of them have already been to therapy and their partner's not growing with them. And they're upset with their partner because their partner's not changing and they are, right? And so that is a lot of what I see is happening, right? So what I find though, and why it's so important to go back and revisit that child back there, because now we're older and we're wiser. And so now we get to talk to that child. We can ask that child about, how did you feel when that happened? What did you need in that moment that you didn't get from that person? And how can I give that to you now? How can I show up for you as an adult, as your parent, right? I can parent you now and give you those things that you didn't get to feel safe or loved or taken care of in that moment, right? And so that's the kind of stuff that I like to do with people. And the other piece of that is like asking them, what they needed in that moment, and then asking how to provide that to them. And so it just makes you to feel safe and it helps you to not have to look outside of yourself for other people to fill in those gaps for you.
Well, the one thing that you do, it looks like, is that everybody, the people that are other speakers, they're all been through some kind of childhood trauma, and that their breakthrough came when somebody cared. They saw that somebody wouldn't give up on them, and they actually cared about them, which seems to be that's what your goal is. So that's great. And I just want to add in there that we do things that we think that are normal, and anger. If you're not really healed, right, you can get angry quite often. And then I used to think that ruminating was normal. I thought everybody must just ruminate about stuff, but come to find out that wasn't really normal. So I try not to do that. I do that any longer. But, that just shows you that when you go through the trauma, until you get exposed to coaches and books and things to learn, you're going to be safe, and you're just going to do what you continue to do through the power of your subconscious mind. And
100%.
and then the question I have here is for people who feel stuck in the victim identity, not by choice, but because their nervous system learned survival early. What's the first gentle step towards shifting from this happened to me, to I have power now?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think the first thing I want to address is the nervous system piece. I want to be very open to the idea that like you will have people watching this will be in various stages of healing, right? There might even be somebody who's watching this that right now is in the midst of trauma, like they're going through traumatic events in their life or whatever. And so, when you talk about the nervous system, yeah, I mean, anytime trauma happens or we're triggered from past trauma, it basically hijacks our body, right? So I think it's important to really like understand that when that happens, like we have to get our body back to center first before we can do any other processing or even function, right? Like when that happens. And so in that, there's a lot of different things, a lot of tools that you can use, breath work, and I use tactile, auditory, various things to keep you present in the moment to get you back to center, right? So that I just want to address that first. And I'm trying to remember the second part of your question.
It's talk
So
about
moving from basically this happened to me to I have power now. So a gentle first step. Well, again, it's always going to be awareness, but I think really it's just about like realizing that your trauma is not defining you. It doesn't have to define you, right? It's a part of your past. It did influence how you are and who you are today, but it doesn't need to define you in a shameful way. And that you have the power to change and to like take your power back. So if I may share a story, just like it's not a story, it's an actual like a client that I worked with, just to kind of reiterate a little bit, but like, so I have a client who is she's a sexual abuse survivor, and she came to me. She had been in years of therapy. She's done trauma therapy. So she's worked through all that, right? And she came to me because she wanted to leave her husband. She's been trying to leave him for many, many years. And she just felt stuck. She was miserable and wanted to move forward. And she wanted so badly to figure out, she's like, I think that there's something that's from my past getting in my way, but I don't know what, and I don't know how to get to it. So she was a perfect client for me. But so basically, and there was much, much more to this, but I just wanted like one example of what was getting in her way was we finally got her to a space, like basically there were a lot of fears that were coming up for her that was based on her past. But one of the moments that I wanted to focus on was like as she finally filed for divorce and she had the papers that she needed to give to him and have the conversation with him. That's a scary moment for any of us, right? None of us want to have that conversation, but for her, it was actually like traumatizing her. And she basically shut down and like for weeks couldn't like move forward. And so when she came back to see me, like we dug into that, right? And so once we like what's getting in your way, and it was fear, but she couldn't name the fear. She didn't really know what she was afraid of, right? And so as we did some digging and we went back and like she realized that like she had a fear from when she was going through her abuse, and she learned in that process the perpetrator had basically threatened her that if she speaks about anything that happened that bad things would happen, right? And so she somewhere in there in her child brain took on that if you talk about bad things that bad things will happen, right? And so she's carried that through her whole life. Every relationship she's ever had, every partner she's ever chosen, that's shown up in her marriage. So they've never communicated. So she chose a partner to allow her to continue those coping mechanisms and not have to talk about things. So their pattern of behavior was if something bad happens, he gives a silent treatment, doesn't talk to her for days, weeks, whatever, until she basically comes back and apologizes and overcompensates and fixes it, and they just sweep it under the rug. Well, that's how they've done their marriage, and now it doesn't work. And so we could have stopped there because it would make sense that that's the pattern of how they've done their relationship. And typically how you do, how you show up in a marriage is how you usually show up in a divorce. So it would have been fine, but there was more to it. And so her learning that was something she learned way back then and that it's also affected how she's done in work. Having hard conversations at work, have been hard for her. So she just shuts down. She doesn't do it. And so that's when she gets stuck in life, and that's when she gets miserable. And so us unpacking that and us reframing that and doing some inner child work with that, now she took her power back because she realized like he's had this power over her whole life and she gave it to him, right? And so she basically made the decision to take her power back that day. And so now she's being intentional that when there are hard conversations, she's going to be intentional, and it's not going to be easy for her, right? Like it's going to take steps of choosing to have the hard conversations and proving it to herself over and over again that they can be safe, that they don't have to mean that bad things will happen. And she's going to have to trust that. And she's going to have to take big, scary steps to get there, but she's taking her power back. And that feels pretty good.
Well, people that have childhood trauma, we all have the same thing, or a lot of the same symptoms, especially the confrontation with people, because that wasn't safe, right? When we were
Yes.
kids, that wasn't safe. So
Yeah.
I'm still a little bit big in it. I don't like confrontation at all.
Yeah. That's a
If
good
I can
awareness.
people
Yeah.
please you, if I can people please you into getting through this moment, I'm okay with it.
Yes.
So,
But great awarenesses here on how it's affected how you show up, right? And how your pattern of showing up. Yeah.
but and your statement is you have to be aware. You have to be
Yes.
aware that this is something that you picked up in childhood, not something that's normal, like for good. Because I was just having a conversation with the speaker the other day, and she had went through a couple divorces, and then she shut down with her third husband, I think it was, and he thought that talking and getting things out were normal. So
Mm,
now they adapted to that, and now she has a very successful marriage. So, but
yeah.
you have to have the courage to do it in order to see the transformation.
Yeah. And be intentional on taking those steps, even though they're scary to change, right? I'm sure it wasn't easy for her. Like that's how she's done life. And it's not easy. It's scary.
Well, I mean, the way I just look at it is it worth being confrontational about, or should I just get over it, right? But that's why I'm 65 and never been married, because because I don't, I've just never wanted to get a divorce, and I never wanted to kind of go through some of the stuff that
Yeah.
I saw marriages happen.
Understandable. Yeah.
But now that I'm getting older, and I'm just really, well, now that I'm really focused on healing, right? It A lot of the things that I thought were normal weren't normal, and I'm feeling good, and I'm getting courage and all the other stuff that goes along with it. And I started Rich in Purpose so that nobody else would have to kind of go through the stuff that I went through.
Yeah.
And it's not just me, right? It's everybody that goes through childhood trauma. We go through a lot of the same things. And if you can
Yes.
get support, and if you can have a mastermind that will help you understand that what you want in life is good, instead of, oh, you don't have that capability and I wouldn't try that if I were you. That
Mm,
doesn't come in the mastermind. And when you get that, right, you just feel like, oh wow, somebody believes in me, and that's a good
mm,
thing, right? And I think
yeah.
that from what you're saying is that that's the experience that your clients get from you, is that I'll accept you any way you want,
Mm,
because it's not something that's you. It's something that happened to you, and a habit that
yes.
you picked up, right? That you thought
100%.
was normal.
And the thing is we all do it. Like we all do it. So it's for all of us to learn to become conscious of and how it has impacted us. And then we all take ownership and responsibility for our own feelings and our own thoughts and how we show up in this world, right?
Right. And Tammy, it says, you work with people who struggle with addiction, self doubt, and trauma. What role does self compassion play in breaking the unconscious patterns that keep people looping in the same struggles?
Well, when you talk about self compassion, what comes up for me is, it's the same as self love, right? And so, unfortunately, a lot of times when we've been through trauma, like we don't have a lot of self love. And so that becomes the journey back to, first of all, figuring out sometimes even who we are, especially if we've been that people pleaser or codependent. We get so focused on everybody else. And so it can feel really uncomfortable. And so one of the things I try to do in my coaching is I do core work with people. And so we can't love ourselves until we know ourselves, right? And so it's a matter of getting in touch with who we are at the core and helping to show them who they are and literally shining that light on them instead of how they've always looked outside of themselves, and helping people to just look inside and start to like get in touch with what they want and what they think and how they feel. And that can be very, very uncomfortable, right? It can be very uncomfortable for people. But it just takes time. It takes time. And once you learn to choose yourself, that starts to get you out of the patterns. And so we have to have the awareness of how we've been showing up and how that doesn't work so much for us. And then be intentional on doing things that choose us. And that might mean setting a boundary or saying no or whatever that looks like, right? And so, a lot of times the people that I work with, and I was like this too, it's just it takes time and effort. And not only do we have to, like, if we talk about boundaries, not only do we have to set a boundary, but now I have to actually hold myself accountable to maintaining that boundary, right? And so it takes time, it takes effort, it takes consistency. And the biggest thing I would say is give yourself some grace, because we are human. And the likelihood is that we're going to have those moments where we fall back. Like it's very likely that it will happen. None of us are perfect. And so give yourself the grace of, this is part of the growing, this is part of the learning process. And I always say, if you fall, give yourself, some grace, dust yourself off, but learn from that. Like, why did I fall? What happened there? What got in my way? What pushed me back? Now I know, now I can do better next time, and I can plan for next time better and continue to choose me in that. Right.
Well, when we come out of childhood trauma, 90% of the time we don't love ourselves, right? We've never really had love, so we don't love ourselves, and it affects us in people pleasing. It affects us. Do I go to the doctor, or do I want to know that I'm really not feeling well, so we don't go to the doctors enough? There's just so many things that come from loving yourself, and until you experience it, right? How do you know it's going to be good until you actually experience it? And in all of my conversations with experts and coaches is I just try to get people to know that you can't do it by yourself, right? Because you people please, right? And then you set a boundary, and then your good friend drops you because you're not a people pleaser anymore. So then you start thinking, did they really love me, or am I lovable? So it's a circle. I mean, you can't and you can't really get out of that circle until you read, till you find people like yourself to help people, or that to help you. And that's why the childhood trauma, if it took you 50 years or 30 years to get to where you are, don't think that you're going to be cured or healed from what the trauma in 2 months, right? It's a
Correct.
journey, and
It is a journey.
yeah, and
Yeah, if I may, I also want to point out the fact that we heal in layers. So like I can't count the times, even myself personally, let alone clients, but like, gosh, I've worked on this. I thought I healed this, right? And then you get frustrated and like, gosh, what's wrong with me? I went backwards or something. But basically what I always tell people is like, that just means we're going to go deeper now. Like you've done the surface level and now we're going a little deeper, and then we're going to go a little deeper. And then so when you get to the deep stuff, then you've done some work, right? But just being open to knowing that life's a journey, like you said, and that it's always just a constant growth. I've had a few clients though lately say, gosh, it's just so much work. And sometimes it can feel that way. It can, but it does get easier, and you just got to stick with it. So
yeah, it does. And what you have to realize is it's not linear either, right? I mean, you can get someone like yourself and say, and you get and you'll have a lot of healing, and then all of a sudden you think, well, in about 7 months I should be totally healed. But it's not. In it becomes, if things slow down, the more the trauma has affected you, and you have to realize that it is a lifelong journey, right? You're gonna be able to get to you love yourself and to love others, but there, until you go for however long it is, you're gonna get triggers, and but you'll be aware, right? That, oh, this is from my childhood trauma, and this is the way that I've talked to Tammy, and I've learn from other people that this is the way to heal, is by doing this. And so you do the right thing, and then all of a sudden start getting healing from that. So that's what I want people to realize, through this talking with you, Tammy, is that don't give up in 7 months
Mhm.
just because you're not totally healed. Keep going, because the reward is living a life that you dream about, right? And you usually can't live the
Absolutely.
life you dream about until you get
Hmm.
healed in some way.
Hmm.
It says, if someone is listening today and feels like their past has defined them too long, what is one empowering perspective or practice they can begin to do to reclaim their identity, confidence, and personal agency? Which is kind of what we were just kind of talking about a little bit. But if you can just expound on that and say that, you don't have to be stuck and you don't have to be this person, because at the end of the day, Tammy, our identity is what defines us, right? Sometimes we can, people can say, "Oh, you're an angry person," and if you believe it, and then you don't get angry in a situation, you're like, "That's not my identity. I'm going to let this person have it," right? So if you have an identity that doesn't really that you really have gotten over time, but it's not who you want to be, then it takes time to reprogram your subconscious mind and become a
Yeah.
different person than than you. And a lot of times people will tell you that you're that person and really don't want to
Yeah.
be that person. It's just the mask that you're wearing.
It is. And I guess for me, like the first question I'm going to ask that person is, where did it come from? Where do you think that came from for you? Like, where did that start? And then let's go there and unpack that so that we can change that, right? And
Right.
how it's shown up for you. And now you've taken it on as yours. And now you've shown up that way in pattern after pattern after pattern. And now you want to change it, but you can change it. You don't have to have it be your identity. You don't have to wear that mask. You can be who you are. Let's figure out who you are and let's change that for you. Let's help you to empower yourself to change that.
Right. I mean, and that's why, even though sometimes it seems like old time goals, get specific on who you want to be, right? You can say, I want to be a nice person, but then what does a nice person look like to you? And you
Mm-hmm.
make that list, and you
Yeah.
start becoming that person. And now you're thinking, oh wow, I am a nice person, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not what I was labeled to be, an angry person. Right?
Mm-hmm. I do find that doing core values helps a lot with that. It really gets people to like tap into who they are inside at the core. And then once we start to live life in alignment with those, that's when we find fulfillment. When we are off, when we are feeling anxious or whatever, a lot of times we are off with who we are at the core. And so we got to figure that out. So core values, I think, are always helpful too. And I do that a lot with core work.
Well, and just realizing that it's not a normal behavior. It's something that you learn to protect yourself and be safe. And I think that, again, it's just getting yourself surrounded by people that can support you and help you is just so important. And I think I've said this in a couple of other segments, is that for 10 years I isolated myself, and I would read and I would read, but people would say, "Jamie, do you want to do this?" Because I quit drinking at the time as well, so I didn't want to go out and get drunk. And I would say, "No, I'm just busy at work. I'm just busy at work." But and so finally, eventually they just quit asking you to do anything because they know you're going to say no. But then you get a chance to make new, encouraging friends. But yeah, I mean, you have to be careful about just getting into a little bit of isolation and
Mm-hmm.
not growing it that way. Because the one thing I found is I thought it all worked, but just reading won't heal you until you get put into the situation where you
Mm-hmm.
can actually use the things that you learned. Right? I can learn to
Yes.
swim in the book, but
Yep.
until I go in and jump into the water, I don't know if I can swim or not. Right?
Right.
So your
Yeah.
experiences that you think is going to be good, and you learned right from your books and stuff that you read, is getting into situations where you can actually be that person. You know, and somebody I heard, I think I forget it's one of the popular person, but he says, um, if you ask God for patience, He's not going to give you patience. He's going to give you opportunities to be patient, and then you
Right.
grow into that. So just have to be always aware that, you know, you become the person you want to become by putting yourself in situations where you can be that
Mhm.
person.
Yeah,
It says
100%.
when someone starts rewriting their beliefs and releasing old wounds, relationships often shift. How can people stay grounded and connected while their inner world is changing?
Yeah, so great question. It's kind of a two-part there. So I think we kind of talked a little bit about like how relationships shift, which I love you asked that question because they do. And I think I shared that example of a lot of my clients that are going through a divorce because they're shifting and their partner isn't. Um, but I think it is important. And you just talked about isolating yourself all that time. And I think it, you know, when we're going through these changes, we can tend to isolate ourselves, and that affects all of the relationships around us too. And then, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes people don't like how we're changing how we show up because I always say, like, we are changing the dance, right? Like, we had a dance, you and I, as whatever that relationship looked like. And now I'm changing part of that dance, and that other partner usually doesn't like it, right? And so they have to change with us, or sometimes we are no longer in alignment with where we settle out. Um, so just staying, I'm trying to remember what part that second part of your question was. I think it was to like to stay connected. Was it to stay connected or stay grounded?
How can people stay grounded and connected while their inner
Okay.
world is changing?
Okay. Thank you. So we have to be intentional. First of all, we have to have awareness that we're doing it. And so like you have the awareness. I'm curious if you like, and you don't have to tell me, but like if that, well, if you knew back then that you were doing that, which I have to think you probably did, but you were continuing to choose it. So we have to be intentional. If we know that connection is important to us, we need to be intentional and find ways. And so as a coach, I would be helping you to make plans to be intentional, to make sure you keep connection as a part of your life. And so we would work through that on what works best for you and what your comfort zone is. And we might have to do baby steps to get there, especially if you've gone 10 years isolating or whatever. Um, but yeah, so being intentional first and foremost. And then as far as being grounded, yeah. The biggest thing I would say for grounded is to stay present. You know, you talked about ruminating thoughts and things. Anytime we go too far in the future or in the past, that's where the rumination comes. And, you know, the past is usually going to make us sad or shameful. The future is going to make us anxious. And so when we stay grounded in the present, and we can be fully present not only for ourselves, but then we can be fully present with the people around us. And so fully present is going to look like maybe we have to do some breath work, right? Some breathing exercises. There's some tactile things we can do. Getting outside in nature is always good. Going for a walk, anything that gets you outside. And then when you're there, like be fully present. Like actually think about like what do I smell? What am I hearing? What do I see? How does the sun feel on my face? I hear those birds. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. You know, like just being in that moment, and try as often as you can to just be in the moment and find the gratitude and the joy in that moment and present with yourself and with other people out there.
Well, the one thing I think that, and I've picked this up, is gratitude can change your life. And if you can be grateful for the little things, right? I mean,
Mhm.
even if you might want $1 million, but you only have 10, be grateful for the 10 that you have, right? Because
Mhm.
there are many, many people in this world that $10, that's what they dream of, right? If you get in certain areas, if I only had $10, I could live for a year in that area. But you have to just be grateful because every situation that you get into can get you to the place you're going, but you have to address it. And that's the one thing. When I was in isolation for 10 years, I was very knowledgeable. And one of the people I used to listen to a lot, Dennis Waitley, there are educated derelicts on every corner. And that's kind of what I was, right? If you asked me how to heal yourself, I could blah, 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 and tell you because I've read everything. But
Yeah.
if you can ask me, or if you looked at me, or is that the life that you're leading? No, that's not the life that I'm leading. Right?
Mhm.
But I encourage you to lead that life. So, it's one of those things that, again, what we've been talking about, Tammy, is that you have to take action and you have to be aware. Because one of the statements a coach had the other day is confidence is if you take action and you get confidence, you're on your way to really accomplishing a lot of things. Without confidence, you just really can't go a lot of different places.
Yeah, and I will say about that, you're right about that, Jamie. I think I like everything you just said. I agree with all of it. And when it comes to confidence, sometimes we have to start without it. We have to start with the fear and do it anyway, right? And it takes doing hard things to prove to ourselves that we can do them, right? And so sometimes we start and we're not feeling so confident, but over time, when we keep doing these things that give us our power back, or take things and do things that face our fears, or that we know are hard, and we can walk away going, wow, I feel amazing, that's when we build that confidence over time.
Well, and one thing, Tammy, is if you're great at something, you started off terrible because everybody that
True.
you can be the greatest. You can be what was the guy's Peter McMahon, or the quarterback that was really really good. You know, he didn't start out that way. But if you asked him, how did you become that? Right when everybody else got off of done with their football coaching and went out to play, he was throwing. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
they went the extra mile to become the person that they really wanted to become. And I think that
Yeah.
it's so important that you realize that everybody started off terrible, but they became great
Good point.
in practice and having the confidence to move forward.
Yeah. Good point.
And I have this last question for you, Tammy, is what's one thing you wish every survivor knew about their capacity to heal and rebuild a life rooted in self-trust?
You got this. That's the one thing I always said. Like, that's my motto. I even have a coffee mug that says, you got this. Yeah, it doesn't have to, you don't have to be defined by your past, and you don't have to be afraid to have feelings. That's one thing that I have an ebook called Heal to a Guide to Healing Unconscious Unresolved Feelings, because so many people are so afraid to face their feelings or to go back and do the work or whatever. Um, it's not as hard as you think, and things will get better. And it gives you the power to change your life and to not be held to a victim of your past.
Well, anytime that you stay a victim, you're not going to go forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to, and again, write down who you want to become. And if that action someone is asking you to do doesn't help you become the person you want to become, set the boundary, don't do it, and know that, wow, I just did something for me, right? And
Absolutely.
then you're going to
Yes,
think,
that feels good.
yeah, and you're going to feel it, and you're going to think, wow, next time that becomes, I think I want to feel like this again, and your
Mm-hmm.
subconscious will let you do it. So
Yeah.
that it is always confidence, and taking the first step will get you to what is the statement? Uh, Journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and the
Mm-hmm.
journey to become the person that you want to become takes the first action, right? Of being that person, setting a boundary. And if that person decides to leave you, okay, then they weren't the right person for me at this time in my life. And you just kind of accept it, and you get that self-love, right? And the one thing is that my theme has been in this summit is self-love. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
happens really until you love yourself. And then the world is the world is your oyster, or the world is yours to do whatever you want. But you have to love yourself, and you have to think that you deserve the life that you want to lead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tammy,
Yes.
thank you so much for being with us. The one thing that I think that most people saw during our interview is that you are that person that is going to accept you who you are, is going
Mm-hmm.
to not judge you, because we all started at a lot of us in the same place. So if somebody connected with you and said, look, here's a lady that really I think can understand me, can help me move forward, how do they get a hold of you?
So I would say to find me on my website, which is Tammy at TammyOswaldCoaching.com. or I'm sorry, TammyOswaldCoaching.com. I'm giving my email, I guess. But my email is Tammy@TammyOswaldCoaching.com if someone wanted to reach out that way too. So either way, they can find me there and send me
All
a
right. Well, we'll
message.
put your website. We'll put your
Happy
website on the screen so people will be able to see it. And
Okay.
Tammy, I just want to thank you so much. You've opened up a lot of, I think, thoughts and processes that people can address, and it's always the fact that find yourself a coach, find yourself a mastermind, find yourself a mentor, because so many times the people that you grew up with and the people that you attracted when you were going through the traumas and the things that you attracted are not the person that's going to the people that are going to get you to the next level. It's people that believe in you and trust in you and encourage you and love you like yourself and like a mastermind can do. So I just really encourage people to love yourself, take that first step, and become the person that you want to be. So, Tammy, thank you so, so much. And I'm sure that we're going to, these are summits that we're going to do because I just think it's so great to introduce to people like yourself and other speakers that we've had. So, I'm hoping that you'll join us for another summit.
I would love to. Thank you so much, Jamie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Tammy.